Chapter 1: The Betrayal of the Hulk. In the long and turbulent life of Bruce Banner, betrayal had taken many shapes, governments hunting him, armies firing on him, heroes misunderstanding him, but nothing compared to the quiet, calculated treachery that began the tragedy destined to become World War Hulk. It did not start with a punch, a blast, or a roar of rage. It began in a silent room, hidden beneath the Illuminati's sanctums, where a handful of the world's most brilliant minds gathered with the authority of kings and the arrogance of gods. They were the secret shepherds of the world: Tony Stark, Reed Richards, Stephen Strange, Charles Xavier, Namor, and Black Bolt, men who had already shaped the fate of nations. And as they exchanged grim glances in the dim light, the topic before them was one they had been avoiding for years: the Hulk. Bruce Banner, the man cursed with a monster, had become, in their eyes, not merely an unpredictable ally, but the greatest living threat to the planet. Every time Bruce lost control, entire cities trembled. Rage was his heartbeat, destruction was his shadow. And although Hulk had saved the world more times than anyone cared to count, the Illuminati saw only the risks, risks that kept escalating as Banner's transformations grew stronger, faster, and more deeply tied to his emotional state. It was Reed Richards who first put words to the thought the others feared. We cannot cure the Hulk, we cannot contain him, we cannot kill him, but perhaps we can send him somewhere he cannot hurt anyone. Tony Stark called it a humane solution. Stephen Strange called it necessary. Namor called it what it truly was: cowardice, and he refused to take part. But even Namor, king of Atlantis, could not stop the others. In that room, at that moment, the fate of Bruce Banner was sealed long before he even sensed the shift in the winds of betrayal. The plan was simple, elegant, and cruel: lure Hulk into a spaceship under the guise of a mission, launch him into space, and send him to an uninhabited planet where he could live out the rest of his days in peace, harming no one. A paradise, a world without conflict, a place where the Hulk could finally know freedom. But at its core, it was exile decided without Bruce Banner's consent, without his knowledge, without the faintest glimmer of choice. They justified it by telling themselves they were saving lives. They justified it by believing they understood the Hulk better than Bruce himself. They justified it because they had grown accustomed to playing gods. And so, when Hulk answered their call, thinking he was being summoned to stop a rogue satellite from crashing to Earth, he entered the ship willingly. He trusted the heroes who had fought beside him for years. He believed in them, despite all the pain they had caused him. He believed they would never betray him. But as he stepped into the command deck and saw the interior of the ship sealed shut, around him, something deep inside Hulk stirred. Confusion first, then unease, then slowly, a rising hatred that tasted like old blood. Screens lit up around him. A hologram activated. Tony Stark's face appeared, cold and resolute. Reed Richards, Black Bolt, Strange. Even Professor Xavier, absent physically, was part of the decision in spirit. They stood before Hulk in flickering projections, delivering a speech rehearsed to sound compassionate. They told him he was too dangerous. They told him this was the only way. They told him he would be safe on the new world. Bruce Banner felt the words like knives. Hulk felt them like fire. The hologram ended with a message that would one day become the spark of a war. This is not a punishment. This is mercy. The ship locked its trajectory, boosters igniting with a force that rattled Hulk's bones. He lunged at the door, fists smashing into reinforced metal, roaring with betrayal. But the Illuminati had planned for his strength. The ship held, Hulk was trapped, and as Earth grew smaller in the window before him, swallowed by the cold void of space, Hulk learned a truth that burned deeper than any wound. The people he had fought for, bled for, and nearly died for had chosen to throw him away. Alone in the ship's dim interior, Bruce Banner emerged for a moment, pressing a trembling hand against the window. He whispered, "Why?" The ship did not answer. It only flew forward, deeper into the stars. Banner retreated inward, swallowed by despair. Hulk took his place again, eyes glowing with something far more potent than rage, purpose. The journey was long, silent, and directionless, guided only by the coordinates Reed Richards had programmed into the vessel. The destination was peaceful, untouched, and empty, never knowing the monster destined to land upon its soil. But fate, in its cruel poetry, altered that path. A wormhole, unexpected, violent, tore open before the ship, swallowing it whole. Reed had not anticipated this. Reed had not calculated the wild, unpredictable chaos of the cosmos, and thus the ship was hurled off course, flung across galaxies, battered by cosmic winds until it crash-landed not on the paradise world promised, but on the savage planet known as Sakaar. The betrayal did not end with exile, it began with it. Hulk crashed into the gladiatorial pits of Sakaar, beaten, captured, enslaved. A king's monster turned into a slave's weapon. But the most painful truth was yet to come, something even the Illuminati did not foresee. Something that would ignite a war unlike any other, because on Sakaar, Hulk would discover strength, purpose, love, and acceptance, not as a monster, not as a weapon, but as a hero. And when the Illuminati's betrayal followed him across the stars, shattering everything he had built, Hulk would return home, not as an Avenger, not as Bruce Banner, but as the Green Scar, as the Worldbreaker, as the man who would bring war to Earth. And all of it began here, with betrayal disguised as mercy, spoken by heroes who believed themselves righteous. The day they exiled the Hulk was the day they created their greatest enemy. Chapter 2: The Illuminati's Exile. Before the Hulk ever set foot on Sakaar, before he was chained, crowned, loved, and broken, the decision that would define his fate was forged in the shadows of power by men who believed themselves wise enough to decide the future of the world and perhaps of the universe. And if the first chapter of this tragedy was betrayal, then the second was the cold, methodical execution of that betrayal, dressed in the language of strategy, necessity, and moral burden. The Illuminati had not assembled overnight. They were the product of crisis after crisis, of wars, alien invasions, and cosmic threats that had convinced a handful of the most influential figures on Earth that only a secret council operating outside the knowledge of governments and teams could safeguard the planet. Tony Stark, genius futurist and engineer of miracles. Reed Richards, the man who mapped reality like a mathematician draws a graph. Stephen Strange, sorcerer supreme, protector of realms beyond mortal comprehension. Black Bolt, silent king of the Inhumans, whose whisper could destroy mountains. Namor, monarch of Atlantis, caught between humanity and the sea. And Charles Xavier, absent in some gatherings but ever present as a moral, if often compromised, compass. They had met to discuss the Kree-Skrull War, the threat of cosmic entities, the danger of unprepared governments. Time and again they convinced themselves that secrecy and preemptive action were virtues, that they alone could carry the weight of decisions that would cripple ordinary leaders. But each choice, each intervention, edged them closer to a line they did not realize they were crossing until they had already stepped far beyond it. The Hulk to them was not a man, he was a problem. Reed came with charts and projections, models showing that every time the Hulk appeared, the potential destruction scaled upward. He pointed to battle after battle, the devastation in Las Vegas, the ruined towns, the near-miss extinctions. Tony added psychological profiles, arguing that Banner's mind was too fragile a cage for such power, that any attempt to rehabilitate him had failed, that any cure had slipped through their fingers. Strange spoke of mystical prophecies, of glimpses in the ether that suggested the Hulk could one day shatter dimensions, not just cities. "We are not just preventing disasters," Stark said quietly. "We're preventing the end of the world." Namor slammed his fist on the table, disgust written clearly across his face. "You speak of him like a weapon that misfires," the Atlantean king growled. "He is a man who has saved your world as many times as he has damaged it. How many times have your governments fired bombs, your companies poisoned the air, and yet you do not exile them into space?" Reed's jaw tightened. "This isn't about blame, it's about risk." Strange, hands steepled, eyes heavy with the weight of his own secrets, murmured, "Some forces are too great to exist on a populated world. We have tried spells, therapy, isolation. The Hulk always returns." To Strange, who had walked realms of chaos and seen entities that fed on destruction, the Hulk was not simply anger, he was a gravitational well of catastrophe, pulling danger toward him. Tony looked at Namor and replied, "We're trying to save everyone, including him. The planet we've chosen is uninhabited, rich in life, with no intelligent civilization. He could live in peace, no armies, no fear, no one to hurt him." Namor scoffed. "Peace? You mean prison with a prettier sky?" Black Bolt said nothing, but his silence was taken, as it often was, as consent. His experience with power beyond control gave him a grim solidarity with the argument. The vote was cast. Namor alone voted no. Xavier was not present physically, but his prior input had made it clear. Banner was a danger beyond the reach of telepathy, beyond the reach of conventional intervention. And so, through a mixture of logic, fear, and self-deception, the Illuminati walked themselves into justifying the unjustifiable. They would send the Hulk away not with guns, not with a cage, but with a lie. The plan required precision, and Tony Stark specialized in precision. Using a SHIELD level emergency alert and the credibility of the Avengers, they crafted a faux mission around a rogue satellite, dangerous, out of control, something only the Hulk's raw strength could destroy. When the call reached Banner, he did not suspect treachery. Despite years of conflict, a part of him still believed that when the world called for help, it did so honestly. He transformed, as he always did, under the pressure of crisis and rage into the Hulk, letting the Green Titan take the burden of the mission. As Hulk intercepted the dangerous satellite and landed within the craft's endurance range, Stark activated the interior systems. The vessel that seemed like a simple piece of orbital junk unfolded around Hulk with fluid metallic movements, transforming into a containment pod more advanced than any prison ever built for him. Hulk roared in surprise, pounding the walls. The ship responded not with violence but with a cold voice that activated the pre-recorded message. The holograms appeared one by one. Tony first, then Reed, Strange, Black Bolt. The Hulk, more emotion than comprehension, saw only their faces and heard tones that to him were betrayal made sound. But inside, deep within the rage, Bruce Banner listened. Tony explained that they had come to a unanimous decision without ever using the word exile. Reed laid out the logic of it, the danger metrics that painted the Hulk as an extinction-level threat. Strange spoke with a sorrowful gravity, explaining that mystical and mortal attempts had both failed. Black Bolt, silent as ever, stood as a symbol more than a participant, his presence adding weight without words. Banner recognized, with a sickening twist, that these men thought themselves his friends, or at least his allies. They wore the expressions of men forced into a hard choice. They spoke of regret, of necessary measures, of a world where you will finally know peace. The words spun around Hulk's mind like a storm. Peace, safety, for him, for them. Beneath it all, the unspoken message howled, "We are done with you." The ship's engines engaged as the holograms faded. Hulk roared, smashing his fist into reinforced alloy. The Illuminati had built this vessel specifically to withstand him. They knew his strength, his tactics, his desperation. He was a prisoner in a metal coffin disguised as a gift. As Earth fell away behind him, shrinking into a blue marble retreating into darkness, the raw experience of exile settled into Hulk's bones. For Bruce Banner, it was a quiet, suffocating despair. For Hulk, it was a new kind of anger, less explosive, more focused, sharpened into hatred. In his fractured psyche, something fragile snapped. Back on Earth, the Illuminati dispersed, each returning to their roles with the uneasy knowledge that they had crossed a line. Reed told Sue it was the right call, though he avoided her eyes. Tony buried himself in new armor designs as if engineering could drown out the memory of Hulk's face. Strange retreated into the sanctum, meditating not to find peace but to smother guilt. They had convinced themselves that the story ended with the ship leaving orbit. In their minds, the Hulk was now on his way to a quiet, uninhabited world where he would live out his days free from conflict, free from enemies, free from the people he might hurt. They did not know about the wormhole that awaited him. They did not know about Sakaar. Namor, meanwhile, kept his anger close. He told them before he left the meeting that what they had done would come back to them, and that if the Hulk ever returned he would not stand with them, he would stand with the one they had betrayed. "You have sowed your own destruction," the king of Atlantis had warned, eyes cold as the trench. "And when it comes, do not ask me to help you." The others dismissed his words as melodrama, but Namor understood something they did not. Men who believe themselves above others eventually fall not because of their enemies, but because of their own choices. The exile of the Hulk was not just a tactical maneuver, it was a moral fracture. The cost of that fracture rippled outward. On Earth, the absence of the Hulk was initially experienced as a relief. No more rampages through Manhattan, no more emergency protocols. The Avengers adapted to life without the Green Goliath. Bruce Banner's name faded from headlines. To the public, he simply vanished. Another mystery in a world full of gods and monsters. Some suspected his death. Others assumed he had finally found peace somewhere far away. No one knew that the truth was worse, that his supposed friends had decided the world was safer without him. Throughout this time, only a few carried the secret of what had truly happened. The Illuminati did not share the details with their teams. They did not tell the Avengers they had exiled one of their own. They did not tell the X-Men that the Hulk had been shot into space. Each kept the burden tightly locked away, afraid of what their peers might say, afraid of being judged for playing judge, jury, and executioner. Tony had nightmares. In some, he saw Hulk's fists cracking the glass of his helmet. In others, Banner stood before him, eyes empty, asking why. Reed buried his unease in equations, trying to rationalize the wormhole that had pulled the ship off course once he learned of it in later data, never quite allowing himself to imagine what it meant. Strange saw visions, fleeting images of a planet of sand and blood, a green warrior in chains, a crown of fire, a world aflame, but he dismissed them as possibilities, not certainties, clinging to the hope that exile had indeed been the lesser evil. It was easier to imagine Hulk living in some distant paradise than to accept that they might have thrown him into hell. Still, the Illuminati's choice had consequences at home long before Hulk's return. Their willingness to exile one of their own planted a seed of division among Earth's heroes. When the truth eventually surfaced, it would fracture alliances, tarnish reputations, and make every decision they had ever made suspect. Who else might they decide to remove for the greater good? Which other threats, which other friends might be deemed too dangerous to remain? The Illuminati believed they could control the narrative, control the fallout, control the future. But in the Marvel universe, control is the most dangerous illusion of all. High above Earth, the ship carrying Hulk spun through the wormhole, its path diverted from the empty paradise originally intended. It emerged in an entirely different region of space, battered by cosmic forces, dragged toward a planet that devoured ships and spat out slaves. Sakaar was a world of brutality, where wormholes opened randomly in the sky, dumping debris, garbage, and unfortunate travelers into the hands of warlords. The Hulk's ship arrived not as a peaceful colonist, but as wreckage crashing into a nightmare. On Earth, the Illuminati slept. On Sakaar, the Hulks woke in chains. But in that moment, before gladiatorial arenas, before the warbound, before the throne and the explosion, what mattered most was not yet the rage of the Hulk, but the quiet, festering memory of how it had begun. In Bruce Banner's heart and in the Hulk's soul, the exile was not merely a tactic. It was betrayal by those who claimed to be his allies. The heroes who had once fought beside him had looked at the Hulk and seen not a partner, not a broken man doing his best, but a problem to be solved, a weapon to be removed, a threat to be discarded. That realization would fuel everything that came after. Because when the Hulk finally clawed his way back to Earth, crowned by victories earned in blood and fire, he would not return as a mindless beast attacking blindly. He would return with a list, with names, with memories of a holographic message playing in the darkness of a prison ship. He would return for Iron Man, for Mr. Fantastic, for Doctor Strange, for Black Bolt. He would return for the men who made the choice to exile him. And the world would learn that when you betray the Hulk, you do not get to decide when the story ends. Chapter 3: Planet Hulk. Slave to Gladiator. When Hulk awoke after crashing through Sakaar's violent skies, there was no moment of peace, no chance to gather his thoughts or understand where he had landed. Instead, he opened his eyes to chains, pain, and the metallic taste of blood in a world where mercy was not a concept but a forgotten relic. The first thing he heard was shouting, alien voices barking in a tongue he did not recognize, and the second was the heavy clank of restraints tightening around his wrists, ankles, and neck, each forged from materials unfamiliar even to Hulk's strength. He roared instinctively, muscles expanding as he tried to snap free, but the slavers of Sakaar were not unprepared. They had captured beings far larger, far fiercer, far more monstrous than him from the endless rain of wormholes that scarred their skies. A shock rod slammed into Hulk's side, delivering an electric burst that made his bones twitch. Hulk staggered, snatched the weapon with a growl, and snapped it in half, but more came. Dozens more, surrounding him with disciplined brutality. The obedience disc, small, metallic, sinister, was slapped against his neck, and in an instant a jolt of white-hot agony tore through his body. Hulk collapsed. Even his rage, unstoppable on Earth, could not overcome the technology of Sakaar. He was dragged through dirt, through metallic corridors, through marketplaces filled with slaves bought and sold like cattle. To Sakaar, the Hulk was simply one more piece of flesh fallen from the sky, destined to entertain crowds or die trying. As he regained consciousness, Hulk found himself in a slave caravan, shackled to creatures of wildly different forms. Korg the Cronan, made of living stone, a brood warrior with insectoid limbs. Miek, a small insectoid creature in a larval stage, trembling with fear. Elo Kaifi, proud daughter of a fallen house. And Hieroam the Shame, a quiet, meditative warrior, exiled from his people. Each of them carried stories carved into scars. Each had lost freedom long before Hulk arrived, and each now stared at him with a mixture of curiosity and dread. The guards mocked the new arrival. Another Earthfall, One sneered. Maybe this one will last longer. Hulk responded with silence, not submission, but cold calculation. His hatred burned hotter than ever, but even he understood that to survive in this strange world, he would have to conserve his fury. As the caravan rolled through the city of Crown, Hulk took in his surroundings. Towering metallic structures loomed overhead. Citizens of every species watched with boredom or cruel amusement. The air smelled of oil, sweat, and blood. This was not Earth. This was not paradise. This was Sakaar, where the strong ruled, the weak bled, and the unlucky died in arenas for the entertainment of a decadent empire. Eventually, the slaves were brought before the Red King's imperial guard. The Red King himself was a tyrant, young, arrogant, armored in advanced technology, and celebrated as a near god by his people. His rule was absolute, upheld by the imperial guard known as the Death's Head Warriors. Hulk felt his presence before he saw him, an aura of authority laced with cruelty. The Red King looked at Hulk with a smirk that barely masked the curiosity in his eyes. "Is this the one that fell from the sky?" he asked. "He looks strong," replied Kyera, the old strong, his shadow guard and most loyal protector, her skin glowing faintly with the old power. "But they all break eventually." Hulk growled at her, but another obedience disc shock slammed through him, forcing him to his knees. The Red King laughed, high-pitched, mocking. "Send him to the great arena. Let's see how much he enjoys Sakaar's hospitality." The slaves, including Hulk, were thrown into cells beneath the arena. Their shackles were removed only when replaced with the obedience discs that could drop them at a moment's hesitation. Here, in the dim light flickering off rusted metal, Hulk learned the rules of Sakaar's gladiatorial life. Fight, obey, entertain, survive. Do well, and maybe you eat. Do poorly, and the sands soak up your blood. Korg spoke gently, his voice surprisingly soft for a creature of stone. "Don't fight the disc, it'll only hurt more." Hulk glared at him. Hulk doesn't obey. Korg nodded, pity in his eyes. "Then you'll die quickly." Hulk was silent. In his chest, rage tightened like a fist. Rage at Sakaar, at the Red King, at his captors, and above all, at the Illuminati who had thrown him into this nightmare. He vowed that when he returned to Earth, he would make them pay. But first, he had to survive Sakaar. The next day, the gates opened and the slaves were marched into the blinding sunlight of the great arena. Tens of thousands of spectators roared with anticipation. Drums thundered. The sand beneath Hulk's feet was stained with the remains of those who had come before. The announcer's voice boomed through the Colosseum. "Behold, fresh meat for the gladiator games." Hulk's war-bound companions stood with him, though they were not yet bound by honor or blood, only by fate. The first challenge was immediate and merciless. A pack of insectoid monsters, bred for destruction, released into the arena to test the new slaves. The creatures charged at them, claws slicing through air. Korg smashed one with a single punch, shattering its carapace. Heroim fought with calm precision, using martial arts that flowed like water. Elo defended herself with fierce practiced skill. Meek skittered away, terrified but determined to survive. Hulk tried to smash the obedience disc again, roaring with fury, but the jolt dropped him to his knees. Yet even kneeling, even weakened, even bound, Hulk was not a slave for long. When one of the beasts leapt at him, Hulk caught it mid-air. Pain screamed through his spine. The obedience disc sent another shock, but Hulk ignored it. Teeth gritted, muscles straining. He crushed the beast's skull in his palm. The crowd erupted. Kyera watched with surprise. The Red King leaned forward in his throne, intrigued. Another monster struck Hulk's back. He spun, grabbed it by the throat, slammed it into the sand, and tore it apart. The obedience disc flared again, trying to subdue him, but the audience was already chanting, "Green! Green! Green!" The crowd adored him. And on Sakaar, the crowd's approval mattered more than any law. For the first time, Hulk felt the dynamics shift. He wasn't merely a slave, he was entertainment. The Red King would not kill him yet. Hulk turned to his fellow gladiators. They stared at him wide-eyed. Korg spoke first. "You're strong, friend." Hulk glared. "Hulk, not friend." But despite his denial, a bond had already begun to form, one forged not by trust, but by survival. Over the following weeks, Hulk and the others were forced through trial after trial. They faced monsters with spiked tentacles, beasts that breathed fire, robots armed with plasma cannons, and alien criminals condemned to die in spectacle. Hulk smashed them all. Every victory terrified his captors but thrilled the masses. He began to rise through the ranks, becoming one of the arena's most celebrated champions. But while Hulk fought out of fury, the others fought because they had no other choice. Slowly, they gravitated toward each other, comrades beaten by the same fists, controlled by the same discs, dreaming of the same freedom. One night, after a particularly brutal match, Elo Kaifi was scheduled for execution, deemed a troublemaker by the Red King. When her executioners moved to strike her down, Hulk intervened, not out of compassion, he claimed, but because no one kills Hulk's kill. Nonetheless, his intervention sparked a riot within the arena. The gladiators rose together, fighting guards, tearing down walls, breaking the oppressive cycle. In the chaos, they made a pact, one that would become legend across Sakaar. Heroim called it being warbound, bound by battle, by honor, by survival, by shared scars. One lives, they all live. One dies, they all die. Hulk did not want their oath, but he accepted it in silence, and that was enough. The Warbound was born. Hulk, Korg, Meek, Heroim, Elo, and Brood. Together they were unbeatable. Together they became the arena's greatest champions. But the moment that forever changed Hulk's fate came during a battle against the Red King himself. Paraded before the crowd in ceremonial armor, Hulk roared as the tyrant descended into the arena in his mechanized exo-armor, towering over the Hulk like a metal titan. The two clashed, Hulk's fists against steel, the King's lasers scorching the sand. The Red King smirked, firing blast after blast, confident in his technological superiority. But then Hulk broke through his armor. With a scream of rage, Hulk smashed the exosuit's chest plate, sending the Red King flying. The crowd gasped. The tyrant would have died in that instant had Kyra not intervened. She stepped between Hulk and her fallen king, her body glowing with the old power, ancient energy drawn from the planet itself. She struck Hulk with a single blow, powerful enough to hurl him across the arena. Hulk landed on his feet, growling, ready to kill her. But the obedience disc flared again, and the fight ended there. Yet the damage was done. Hulk had defeated the Red King. From that day forward, the people whispered a new name, the Green Scar, the slave who could kill kings, the gladiator who could topple empires, the prophecy of the Sakaar sun, the savior who would free the planet began to take shape around Hulk, whether he wanted it or not. Over time, the war-bound earned their freedom in the arena, becoming champions of the people. Hulk was no longer merely a slave. He was a symbol, a leader, a hero. For the first time in his life, Hulk belonged somewhere. The war-bound fought beside him, not out of fear, but out of loyalty. The people adored him. He even began to speak more clearly, his mind focusing under the strange influence of Sakaar's energy. He found love with Kyra. He found purpose. He found peace. And for a moment, a brief, fragile moment, Bruce Banner and the Hulk were one, united in a life where they were not hunted, feared, or betrayed. Sakaar was no paradise, but for Hulk it had become home. And that made what happened next so much worse, because the Illuminati's ship, the vessel that had brought Hulk to this world, held one final message, one final betrayal, one final explosion that would take everything from him. But that was the next chapter in Hulk's story, the chapter where exile turned to ashes, where a king became a widower, where peace became rage, and where the green scar became the Worldbreaker. Chapter 4: The Rise of the Green Scar. On Sakaar, where wormholes ripped open the sky and the sands burned beneath twin suns, the creature once known only as the Hulk began to transform into something he had never been allowed to become on Earth. A leader, a champion, a symbol of hope for the oppressed. And though he had arrived on this brutal planet as a slave, forced into chains and thrown into the gladiator pits like nothing more than a beast to be butchered for spectacle, something within him, something deeper than rage, deeper than pain, deeper even than Bruce Banner's fractured psyche, began to reshape itself into a sense of purpose, a connection to others that neither Earth nor the Illuminati had ever allowed him to explore. This transformation did not happen overnight. It was born of blood spilled on the arena sands, forged in combat beside the souls who would become the warbound, nurtured in the moments when Hulk realized that for the first time in his life, he was not alone, not hunted, not treated as a monster. When Hulk first entered the great arena, he was nothing more than the green to the bloodthirsty crowds, a curiosity from beyond the stars, something strange to cheer for as long as it survived. But his strength, his refusal to die, and his raw fury quickly elevated him beyond mere spectacle. With each battle, Hulk grew stronger, more cunning, more connected to the rhythms of Sakaar itself, and soon whispers spread among slaves and common folk alike. This one was different. They had seen warriors fall, heroes die, beasts slaughtered without ever touching the heart of Sakaar. But Hulk remained. Hulk conquered. With each victory, he rose closer to the ancient prophecy of the Sakaarson, the savior who would free the people from the tyrannical Red King. What began as a rumor, a desperate wish among slaves, soon became a chant, shouted from the taverns of Crown City to the stone fortresses overlooking the dust pits. Green Scar! Green Scar! Green Scar! The name stuck because it represented something Hulk himself had never understood until he saw his reflection in the eyes of those who fought beside him. A scar is a wound that heals, a reminder of pain that becomes strength, a mark of a survivor who refuses to be broken. And Hulk carried more scars than most entire worlds. His war-bound Korg, Hiroam the Shamed, Miek, the insectoid survivor, Elo Kaifi, Brood, and later others, fought beside him not because they were forced, but because they recognized his unyielding spirit. Together they became a legend inside the arena, defeating monsters, machines, and elite warriors handpicked by the Red King. Each battle drew the crowds deeper into adoration, each victory fed the myth of the Green Scar. Hulk himself, accustomed to being hunted or hated on Earth, found this alien admiration unfamiliar. But on Sakaar, admiration was survival, admiration was power, admiration was the spark of rebellion. Outside the arena, the planet pulsed with political tension. The Red King, once viewed as a flawless divine warrior, had become increasingly paranoid. His reign, bolstered by fear and propaganda, began to crack under the pressure of a growing resistance movement known as the Shadow People, and whispers circulated that even Kyera, the Old Strong, his most loyal defender, harbored doubts about the king's righteousness. Kyera, born of the Shadow clan and imbued with the old power, the living energy drawn from Sakaar's very core, had once sworn to protect the king because she believed he alone could defend the planet from the monstrous spikes, parasitic creatures that infected and annihilated entire tribes. But as she watched the green scar survive battles no warrior should survive, as she saw him protect his warbound, as she witnessed him stand firm not for glory but for those he cared for, cracks began to form in her devotion. Hulk saw her watching him during matches, her expression unreadable. She was powerful beyond measure, more resilient than stone, and more connected to Sakaar than any living being. But Hulk did not fear her. In time, Kyera would become his greatest ally, then his queen, and then the heart he lost. But that fate was not yet written. The rise of the Green Scar began with bloodshed, but it grew through unity. During a battle that should have killed them all, a fight against the Imperial Death's head units armed with shields that emitted sonic blasts capable of shattering bones, the Warbound stood back to back, enduring wave after wave of attacks. Hulk smashed through machines and men with ferocity, but for the first time he was not trying to escape, not trying to isolate himself, not trying to remove himself from Banner's fear of hurting others. Instead, he fought to protect his warbound, roaring not in loneliness but in defiance. When the obedience discs malfunctioned during the same battle, the slaves could have fled the arena entirely, disappearing into the wastelands where freedom was at least possible. But they stayed, because Hulk stayed. He turned his back to his chains and faced the Red King's champions with one intention: to show his new world that he could not be controlled, not by discs, not by kings, not by fate itself. His roar that day shook the arena, cracked stone, and ignited a fire in the people who watched him. The Red King, enraged that he could not break this new gladiator, sent stronger warriors, more dangerous beasts, even remote-controlled robots armed with carbonadium blades capable of slicing vibranium. Hulk smashed them all, and every time he rose from the dust, the crowds cheered louder. Sakaar, a world long starved of hope, found itself rallying around a being who had not even asked to become their champion. As weeks passed, Hulk and the Warbound were forced through increasingly deadly trials: lava beasts, spike-infected giants, and the Red King's elite soldiers. But with every fight, Hulk's legend grew. The Green Scar was more than a bruiser, he was a thinker, adapting strategies mid-battle, learning from Heroim's discipline, Korg's strength, Ello's rebellious will, and even Mayek's insectoid instincts. He began to understand not only how to fight but how to win, and more importantly, why. When the arena guards ordered Ello's execution for daring to resist the Red King, Hulk intervened, not out of compassion as he insisted gruffly, but because he refused to let the king dictate who lived and died among his warbound. In that moment, Hulk shattered the illusion of control. He seized a spear, broke the executioner's arm, and stood defiantly between Ello and death itself. The obedience disc flared with agonizing force, cracking through Hulk's nerves like lightning, but he stayed upright. The crowd saw him stand through agony meant to subdue titans, and their cheers became a chant that shook the very foundations of Crown City. Green Scar! Green Scar! Green Scar! That was the moment the legend crystallized. Hulk, scarred by betrayal, now scarred by battle, became a beacon for those who had nothing left. And the Red King realized that losing control of the arena meant losing control of the planet. To regain dominance, the king unleashed the spikes upon a village, turning innocent civilians into raging, mindless monsters. The warbound, outraged, charged into the chaos. Hulk fought not just to survive, not just to win, but to save people who feared him less than they feared the king's cruelty. Kyera arrived to clean up the aftermath, expecting the usual carnage left by spike attacks. Instead, she found Hulk protecting children, shielding them with his massive body, fighting infected villagers without killing them, as if he understood their torment. Kyera had always believed the Red King protected his people, But what she saw that night forced her to question everything. Hulk, the outsider, the monster, had done more to save the people of Sakaar than their ruler had done in years. Gaera confronted the Red King privately, her voice low, her anger simmering. But the king dismissed her concerns, intoxicated by his own power. When he unleashed the spikes again, this time directly on Hulk and the Warbound, expecting them to fall, Hulk responded with a fury that shook the city walls. He smashed spike carriers, crushed war machines, and absorbed enough punishment to kill an army. And when the Red King attempted to flee battle in his armored suit, Hulk leapt after him and ripped the armor apart, piece by piece. Only Kaiyera's intervention saved the king's life, and though she stood between Hulk and the king that day, her allegiance had shifted, not publicly, not yet, but in her heart she had seen who deserved to lead, and it was not the Red King. The Warbound's fame grew with each victory. They were no longer slaves, they were heroes to the people of Sakaar. Hulk, now fully embraced as the Green Scar, moved through the city, streets with the Warbound at his side, and citizens bowed, offered gifts, whispered prayers. He did not fully grasp their reverence, but he did understand loyalty, and he returned it. He defended the weak, he inspired the broken. He took on missions to liberate villages, smash tyrants, fight Plasmar the Dissolver, defeat the Silver Surfer when enslaved by the Obedience Discs, and even free him, an act that earned Hulk not only gratitude but respect from a herald of Galactus. With each challenge, Hulk evolved, not just in strength, but in spirit. Bruce Banner buried his voice deeper and deeper, not because Hulk rejected him, but because Hulk no longer needed him. On Earth, Banner was the mind trying to control the monster. On Sakaar, Hulk was the mind, Hulk was the leader, Hulk was the one who cared. And then, after defeating the Red King's armies, after winning the people's hearts, after surviving the impossible, the Warbound and the people of Sakaar crowned Hulk their leader. Not a gladiator, not a slave, but their king. Kaiyera stood beside him as his queen. The shadows of Earth faded, the Illuminati's betrayal dimmed. Hulk had a kingdom, a people, a family. The rage that fueled him for years softened into a quiet, steady strength. He found peace in Kaiyera's presence. He found purpose in justice. He found hope in the children they planned to raise. For the first time in his life, Hulk was happy, but destiny is cruel, and the past never forgets the scars it leaves behind. Because the ship that brought Hulk to Sakaar, the Illuminati ship, held a final secret, a final failure, a final betrayal. And when it detonated, shattering Sakaar, killing Kaiyera, destroying Hulk's home and heart, everything he had built burned away in an instant. The Green Scar died that day, and in his place rose something far more dangerous, the Worldbreaker. Chapter 5: King of Sakaar. The coronation of the Green Scar as King of Sakaar did not erupt like the violent storms that tore across the great desert, nor did it descend with the thunderous force of his gladiatorial victories. Instead, it unfolded with a quiet sense of inevitability, like a long-awaited rain finally blessing a scorched land, because Sakaar, broken, ravaged, divided, had been waiting for something, for someone, who could unite tribes, heal wounds, and turn survival into hope. And though Hulk had not asked for a throne, though he had never dreamed of ruling anything beyond the next battle, the people looked at him and saw the fulfillment of prophecy, the embodiment of strength tempered by compassion, the warrior who had walked through fire and blood, and emerged not as a tyrant but as a protector. When the Red King fell, his armor shattered, his illusion stripped away, and his empire left trembling, the citizens did not call for another noble, another general, another carefully groomed heir. They called for the Green Scar, for the gladiator who had protected villages from spikes, who had broken chains, who had fought beside slaves, who had humbled the strongest and shown mercy to the weak. For Hulk, the concept of kingship was foreign. On Earth, he had been hunted, feared, tricked, exiled, and blamed for every disaster he touched. On Sakaar, he was wanted, needed, loved, and yet, even as the crowds cheered, as banners bearing his scarred face waved above the arena, Hulk stood silently, not basking in glory, but measuring the weight of responsibility pressing onto his shoulders. What is a king, he wondered, if not someone who must always be strong, not for anger, but for others? His warbound understood this transformation even before he did. Korg, the gentle Cronan warrior who had once been forced to kill his own brothers in gladiatorial combat, bowed before Hulk not out of servitude but out of respect. Heroam the Shamed, the monk warrior exiled from his people, recognized Hulk as the true Sakarsan, the prophesied champion meant to bring unity to a shattered world. Elo Kaifi, daughter of a noble house destroyed by the Red King, pledged herself as both advisor and sword, promising to restore justice to the Empire. Miek, small and broken from years of torment, looked up at Hulk with devotion bordering on worship. And Brood, the insectoid warrior, once feared for her predatory nature, found belonging in Hulk's presence. Together they ascended from slaves to champions, from champions to liberators, and now from liberators to the founders of a new era. The coronation ceremony took place in Crown City, atop the very arena where Hulk had once been chained and shocked and mocked for the amusement of the masses. Now he stood tall, no longer a prisoner of fate, but a master of his destiny. The people lined the stone steps leading to the platform, throwing petals torn from crimson desert flowers. The priest scribes painted Hulk's skin with traditional Sakarian war markings, symbolic scars over real ones, each stroke representing a trial he had overcome. Kaira, the old strong, now free of her oath to the Red King and standing proudly at Hulk's side, held the ceremonial blade used to symbolize the cutting of tyranny's chains. She had seen the worst of Sakaar, the spikes, the Red King's cruelty, the collapse of innocent villages, and she had never allowed herself to hope for change. But in Hulk she saw a strength that did not seek domination, a fire that warmed instead of burned, a leader who would never abandon his people. Her eyes softened as she watched him accept the crown, and in that gaze was something Hulk had rarely known: trust. When the crown of Sakaar was placed upon Hulk's brow, a crown forged not from precious metals, but from the salvaged fragments of ships, armor, stone, and bone, he did not roar in triumph. He simply raised one massive hand, a silent oath to protect the world he now ruled. The crowd erupted in a chant that echoed through the streets and into the deep canyon carved by ancient lava flows. Sakarsan, Sakarsan, Green Scar, King. For a brief, precious moment, all the wars, betrayals, and sorrows that had haunted Hulk's life faded beneath the sound of a world celebrating him, not as a monster, but as a savior. Hulk's first acts as king were not declarations of power, they were acts of restoration. He ordered the demolition of the Red King statues, replacing them with communal gardens. He reformed the Imperial Guard, abolishing slave ownership and granting former gladiators positions of dignity and purpose. He reclaimed territories abandoned due to spike infestations, sending teams led by Heroam to safely cleanse regions long left to rot. He repaired villages destroyed by past conflicts, rebuilding homes with his bare hands, lifting stone slabs as effortlessly as a human lifts driftwood. The people of Sakaar watched in awe as their king labored alongside them, helping haul materials, plant crops, and raise buildings. Hulk, who had destroyed so much in his life, found something deeply healing in building. For the first time, strength brought creation instead of devastation. Kyra became not only his queen, but his partner in leadership. The old power flowing through her veins like a living connection to the heart of the planet. allowed her to sense tremors in the earth, structural weaknesses in buildings, even shifts in atmospheric pressure. Together, she and Hulk forged a new era, an era where the Warbound served as guardians, not slaves, where former enemies became allies, where fear gave way to hope. There were diplomatic challenges, battles against remaining forces loyal to the Red King, and even internal tensions among tribes that had been rivals for generations. But Hulk approached each problem with the blunt honesty of someone who had no interest in manipulation or deceit. He listened more than he spoke, he protected more than he punished, and though anger still burned within him, it had become a weapon he controlled, not a force that controlled him. Under Hulk's rule, Sakaar began to heal. The markets reopened, filled with fresh produce rather than overpriced scraps. Children, once forced into hiding during Spike's outbreaks, played freely in the streets. The arenas, once stained with the blood of slaves, were repurposed into schools and communal gathering spaces. Even the skies, torn open by wormholes for centuries, seemed to settle, as if responding to the newfound stability on the ground. For Banner, deep within Hulk's psyche, there was a sense of peace he had never known. Banner had always feared Hulk's strength, but on Sakaar, that strength had purpose. Banner's brilliance complemented Hulk's instincts, giving rise to strategies that blended wisdom and force. For the first time since childhood, Banner did not fight Hulk for control. They existed in harmony. Through Kyera, Hulk discovered something even more unexpected: love. Not the fragile, fearful love Banner had known on Earth, burdened by secrets and tragedy, but a fierce, mutual love born from shared struggles and mutual respect. Kyera saw him, not the monster, not the weapon, not the rage, the man, the protector, the king. Hulk, who had long believed himself unworthy of such connection, allowed himself to feel it fully. They shared quiet nights overlooking the great canyon, watching molten rivers glow beneath the starlit sky. They walked through the royal gardens discussing the future of Sakaar. They laughed, a sound so rare for Hulk it startled even the warbound, when Miek tried and failed to imitate human dance. Eventually they conceived a child, and the news spread across Sakaar like dawn across the desert. The king would have an heir, the queen would raise new life, a royal family would bless the new era. For Hulk, this was the peak of his joy. For Banner, it was a miracle he never believed he would experience. For Sakaar, it was hope incarnate. Yet even amid these moments of peace, dark omens lingered. Hiroam spoke of old prophecies warning that the Sakaar sun might also be the Worldbreaker. Korg wondered aloud whether a man forged in suffering could ever truly escape the shadow of his past. And Kyera, tapping into the old power, sensed a faint vibration deep within the earth, a rumbling that felt unnatural, metallic, artificial. At first she dismissed it as residual instability from the Red King's neglected infrastructure, but it grew stronger each day. Then, in the highest chamber of the palace, Hulk activated the holographic memory core left buried in the ship that had brought him to Sakaar. He hoped it would contain resources, knowledge, technology, something to help rebuild. Instead, it showed him something else: the Illuminati's final message, a warning, a farewell, and a disclaimer about the ship's power core. The message was short, technical, almost clinical. An afterthought read: Richards had recorded to inform Banner that certain components of the ship were volatile due to cosmic radiation exposure. Hulk stared at the hologram, the faces of his former allies flickering before him like ghosts. Tony, Reed, Strange, Black Bolt, the men who had exiled him, the men who had lied to him. In the moment that followed, Kyra felt the ground tremble beneath her feet. The palace walls vibrated, the air grew hot, and then the world exploded. A flash of blinding white light engulfed Crown City. Buildings vaporized, streets melted. The sound was like the scream of a dying star. The ship's warp core, never meant to survive Sakaar's conditions, detonated with the force of a nuclear inferno. The explosion consumed everything in its radius. Hulk, engulfed in fire, survived through sheer resilience, but Kyera, his queen, his partner, the mother of his unborn child, was turned to ash in an instant. His kingdom, his people, his peace obliterated, his heart shattered. In the smoking crater that had once been his world, Hulk knelt in silence, Kyera's remains cradled in his hands. Banner wept within him. Hulk did not cry. Hulk broke. And in that breaking, the prophecy whispered for generations came true. The Sakaar son, the savior, died, and in his place rose the Worldbreaker. Now he would return to Earth, not as a king, not as a hero, not as a gladiator, but as vengeance incarnate. Chapter 6. The Tragedy. The planet explodes. On Sakaar, where Hulk had finally found the peace he had been denied his entire life, where he had built a kingdom from the ashes of oppression, where he had crowned himself not with pride but with responsibility, where he had taken Kyera as his queen and expected to raise children who would never know the cruelty of Earth or the chains of the arena. The tragedy that would reshape the universe began not with a roar or a battle or the sound of an invading army, but with a tremor, small, subtle, almost ignorable, like the world itself inhaling before a scream. In the palace courtyard, where the war-bound had gathered to celebrate the unification of Sakaar's tribes, the air shimmered with warmth and laughter rose from citizens who had once known nothing but fear. The red desert sun painted the stone archways gold. Children chased one another between the pillars. Traders carried silks and spices. Sakaar, which had been shattered for decades by war, famine, and tyranny, now pulsed with life. Hulk stood at the center of it all, massive arms crossed, his face softened in a rare expression of contentment. Kyera placed a hand on his forearm, her eyes glowing faintly with the old power, and for the first time Hulk understood what it felt like to belong, not because he was feared, not because he was strong, but because he was wanted. But the tremor beneath them deepened. Kyera's gaze sharpened. She felt it first, not as an earthquake, but as a disturbance in the old power, the primal energy that tied her to Sakaar's core. "Something is wrong," she whispered. Hulk looked toward the horizon, confused. Sakaar had known countless tremors before, the legacy of a world torn apart by wormholes and cosmic bombardments. But Kyera's voice carried a weight he had learned to trust. She placed her palm against the palace floor, letting the old power flow through her. Her eyes widened. "It's coming from beneath us," she said. Hulk frowned. "Old power hurt?" She shook her head. "Not hurt. Interrupted. Something's artificial." Before Hulk could ask more, Hiram approached, his usually calm demeanor replaced with urgency. "My king," he said. The sensors in the engineering wing detected a surge of exotic energy beneath the palace, origin unknown. Hulk felt something cold twist inside him. Exotic energy, unknown signatures. It sounded like Earth technology. It sounded like the ship that had brought him here. The ship built by the Illuminati. The ship that had held their final message. Hulk's heart began to pound, not with anger yet, but with a foreboding he did not know how to name. He rushed towards the palace interior, the war-bound close behind. The engineering crew, a mix of freed slaves and former Imperial technicians, scrambled around a central console, faces pale as they studied the readings. One pointed to the holographic display. "The energy core from the ship, you said it was dormant." "But," Hulk cut him off. "Ship safe," he growled. "Stark said it's safe." The technician swallowed hard. "With respect, my king, this doesn't look safe." Hulk stared at the screen. A spherical diagram of the ship's warp core pulsed violently, growing brighter with each second. Heroine muttered, "It is overloading." Korg stepped closer. "If it blows, will it destroy the palace?" The technician hesitated, then answered with a trembling voice, "If it blows, it could destroy much more than that." Hulk felt rage stab through him, not fully formed, but rising. "Fix it." "We're trying," the technician whispered. "But this technology, this Earth technology, it's unstable in Sakaar's atmosphere. The fuel cells have been exposed to cosmic radiation for years. The warp core walls are degrading. If we shut it down incorrectly, it detonates. If we do nothing, it detonates." Kyera stepped forward, placing her hand on the console. She closed her eyes, using the old power to sense the core's structure. Her expression tightened. "It's worse than you think," she said. "The energy inside is tearing at the very foundation of Sakaar. The core isn't just overloading, it's corrupting the planet's crust." Meek's antennae twitched nervously. "What do we do, Hulk? What do we do?" Hulk clenched his fists, stepping toward the core chamber. "Hulk, smash it." Heroim grabbed his arm. "If you strike it, my king, you could hasten the explosion. This device was not meant to interact with the old power, with Sakaar's atmosphere, or with cosmic leakage. Its structure is fragile. Too fragile." Hulk growled. "Then why it's still here?" The technician answered quietly. "We didn't dare move it. Its casing was weak. If we tried to open it, if we tried to disassemble it, we feared we might trigger it. We hoped." "You hoped it wouldn't explode," Kyera finished bitterly. Hulk stared at the core room's reinforced doors, his breath deepening. His mind raced, not with Banner's logic, but with Hulk's newly honed instinct, the instinct of a leader, the instinct of a protector. Kyera touched his shoulder. "We can evacuate the palace," she suggested. "Move the people to the mountains." But the technician shook his head. "No evacuation will be far enough. If the core detonates, the mountains will fall, the forests will turn to ash, the cities will crack, the seas will boil." Hiram lowered his voice. "My king, if this core explodes with the full intensity of a warp breach, the entire planet could be destroyed." The room fell silent. Hulk felt his heart stop, not physically, but in the way only grief or dread can stop the world inside a man. "Planet destroyed?" "Yes," Hiram said. Hulk took a step back from the chamber. His breath quickened. Kyera placed her hands on his face gently. "We will fix this," she said. "We will find a way." Hulk looked into her eyes. Eyes he trusted. Eyes he loved. Eyes that carried the future, their future. And that was the moment it happened. A sound like a thunderclap cracked through the palace. The floor buckled, the walls rippled. The warp core screamed, an agonizing whine of metal tearing against physics. Kyera's eyes widened. "It's happening, now!" The explosion detonated. A blinding flash of white-hot energy shredded the palace from within. The blast expanded faster than sound, faster than thought, faster than fear. The shockwave tore through rooms, incinerated hallways, shattered stone pillars, vaporized metal. Kyera, whose reflexes and old power made her faster than any soldier, lunged toward Hulk. She shoved him away from the epicenter just as the inferno swallowed her. Hulk, engulfed in the wave, survived through sheer resilience, but Kyera was gone. Not wounded, not maimed, gone. Turned to ash before his eyes. The force hurled Hulk through collapsing walls, through crumbling floors, through the outer shell of the palace itself. He crashed into the courtyard, cracking the stone beneath him. He lay still for several seconds, vision blurred by after images. Then he forced himself to rise. Smoke billowed from the crater where the palace had once stood. The sky glowed red with fire. Screams echoed across Crown City. Buildings collapsed, consumed by secondary blasts as the chain reaction tore through the ground beneath them. Hulk staggered toward the crater, stumbling over rubble, his hearing ringing, the world reduced to fire and ruin. Kyera! He roared, voice cracking. He leapt into the crater. The heat was unimaginable, enough to melt stone, enough to reduce steel to slag. But Hulk did not feel it. Hulk did not care. He dug through the incandescent debris with bare hands, searching desperately. He found nothing, no body, no remains, only ash scattered across burning rock. Kyera, the woman who had loved him, who had believed in him, who had carried his child, was dead. The warp explosion had annihilated her completely. The warbound arrived behind him, limping, injured, stunned. Korg whispered, "My king, the city, it's gone." Hiroim, eyes filled with horror, added, "The Imperial District, the villages nearby, the refugee camps, they've all been consumed." Meek stared at the crater with twitching antennae. Why did it explode? Why? Hulk did not answer. He stared numbly at the ash on his hands. Then he whispered something so quietly that even the warbomb barely heard it. "Stark's ship." Hiroim frowned. "What do you mean?" Hulk lifted his head, eyes burning with a hatred that surpassed anything Sakaar had ever seen. "This is their fault." The warbond fell silent. Hulk rose slowly from the crater, smoke curling off his skin. His face twisted into something unrecognizable. Not anger, not sorrow, but something darker, something deeper. Kyera had told him she was pregnant only days earlier. Hulk had imagined holding his child, teaching them to be strong, teaching them to be free. That future had been obliterated by the Illuminati's weapon. The ship they sent him in had malfunctioned, detonated, and killed his queen, his people, his unborn child. It had destroyed his kingdom. It had destroyed his happiness. It had destroyed Hulk's heart. As he stood amid the ruins of Sakaar, the flames shimmering off his skin, the warbound approached him. Korg spoke softly. "What do we do now, Hulk?" Hulk did not look at him. He stared at the sky. "We go home." The warbound exchanged confused glances. "Home?" "Earth," Hulk growled. "We go back to Earth." His voice deepened to a monstrous growl. "Hulk will find them." His fists clenched, trembling with rage. "Hulk will make them pay." The air around him crackled as the old power released from Kyera's dying touch began to seep into him, empowering him further. Hiroim sensed it first. "My king, your strength is increasing. The old power." Hulk cut him off. "They killed her." His voice broke. "They killed my world." Behind him, the horizon glowed with the flames of Sakaar's death. Cities fell into chasms. The oceans boiled. Volcanoes erupted as the warp breach destabilized the planet's core. Sakaar was dying. Hulk lifted Kyera's ashes from the crater and held them in his palm. The wind scattered them across the burning world. Hulk stared at the empty sky. Banner wanted to forget, he muttered. Hulk wanted to forgive. His voice darkened. But now, Hulk only wants one thing. Korg stepped closer. "What is that?" Hulk turned toward the warbound, his eyes blazing with cosmic green fire. "War." He began walking toward the remains of the shuttle yard. "We rebuild the ship. We make it stronger. We aim it at Earth." He turned back once more, his face twisted in a snarl of grief and fury. "And then Hulk will show them what it means to lose everything." The warbound followed him without hesitation. Sakaar crumbled behind them. The sky split open with fire. The oceans burst in superheated steam. The land cracked apart. Hulk looked back at the destruction only once more. Then he whispered, "Goodbye, Kyera." The planet exploded. The world Hulk loved became dust. And from that dust rose something unstoppable. The green scar was dead. The king of Sakaar was gone. Only one remained, the Worldbreaker. Chapter 7. We come for vengeance. When the planet Sakaar died in fire, when its crust tore open like a wound, when the sky became a furnace, when the oceans erupted into steam and its cities collapsed into molten chasms, the Hulk did not simply lose a kingdom. He lost the one place in the universe where he had ever been at peace, the woman who had believed in him, the child he would never meet, and the future he had allowed himself to hope for. And all of it vanished in a single blast, a moment of annihilation born not from the wrath of an enemy, not from a natural catastrophe, but from a piece of Earth-engineered technology delivered to Sakaar by the very men who had sworn to protect their world from him. Out of that devastation, out of that crater of ash and betrayal, rose not the Hulk who had once fought beside the Avengers, nor the gladiator who had once sought honor in the arena, nor even the king who had once rebuilt Sakaar with his bare hands, but something new, something sharpened, shaped, and forged by absolute loss, the Worldbreaker. For 3 days after the explosion, Hulk did not speak, he did not eat, he did not rest. He walked among the burning remains of Sakaar like a ghost made of muscle and rage, each step cracking the ground beneath him as though the planet itself trembled in fear. His warbound followed at a distance, watching their king move through the ruins with a silence heavier than any battle cry. Korg kept his distance, knowing grief in Hulk was more dangerous than fury. Hiroim meditated, feeling the old power lingering around Hulk like a storm gathering mass. Elo wept for her fallen people. Miek scuttled nervously, whispering in fragments, trying to make sense of the destruction that had razed their world. And all around them the corpses of Sakaar's people, slaves, nobles, farmers, soldiers, lay buried beneath burning stone. Their cries had ended with Kaira's life. On the fourth day, Hulk finally moved with purpose. He walked to the wreckage of the landing yard where the Illuminati's shuttle, now in pieces, lay half melted in the smoldering earth. There, among twisted metal, he found the holographic core that had once delivered their message of mercy. With hands shaking not from weakness but from a hatred so deep it felt like a new heartbeat, he activated the device. The faces of Tony Stark, Reed Richards, Doctor Strange, Black Bolt, and the absent Xavier flickered into the air. They spoke in calm tones, explaining how they had sent him away for the good of Earth. They spoke as though they were righteous, as though they were wise, as though they understood anything about Hulk's suffering. Kaira had died, watching that message play in the background moments before the core detonated. Hulk stared at their faces for what felt like hours, memorizing every expression, every justification, every betrayal. Then, slowly, he crushed the device in his palm. He turned towards his warbound. His voice, when it finally broke the silence, was low, steady, and colder than the vacuum of space. "We go to Earth." The warbound exchanged glances. Even Korg hesitated. "Hulk," he said gently, "the journey? You know as well as I do that." Hulk cut him off with a glare that made the Cronin warriors step back. They took everything from Hulk. His voice cracked, not with weakness, but with something more dangerous. Resolve. "We take it back." Hiroim nodded. "Then we prepare." The warbound spent the next week scavenging among the ruins, salvaging pieces of the crashed vessels, collecting remnants of Sakarian tech, reforging weapons, and building a ship from the scraps of destroyed worlds. Hulk worked beside them, lifting massive plating, bending metal with his hands, shaping the bow with a single punch. They named it the Stone Ship, not for its material, but for its purpose, unyielding, unstoppable, and destined to carry judgment across space. As they built, word spread among the few survivors of Sakaar refugees, warriors, shadow people, who gathered around Hulk not just as their king, But as their vengeance made flesh, they chanted his name with reverence and fury. Green Scar, Warbound, Sakaarson. But Hulk no longer felt like the Sakaarson. The prophecy had died with Kyera. The man who now stood at the helm of the stone ship was the one whispered in the oldest, darkest version of the legends, the Worldbreaker. When the ship was ready, Hulk led his warband aboard. The survivors gathered at the launch point, some kneeling, some saluting, some weeping, because their king was leaving, but the war he would bring would be theirs as well. Hulk looked at the burning horizon one last time. Kyera, he murmured. Wait for Hulk. He activated the engines. The stone ship rose above the crumbling remains of Sakaar. The planet shook beneath them, its final death throes echoing across the void. As they left its orbit, the world Hulk had rebuilt for love imploded behind them, collapsing into molten fragments and cosmic dust. The stone ship set its course across the stars. The warband gathered in the command chamber, staring at the projected image of Earth, blue, fragile, ignorant of the storm approaching it. Hulk sat at the front, elbows on his knees, fists clenched. Heroim stepped forward. My king, he said carefully, if we do this, many on Earth who had no part in your exile may suffer. Hulk did not turn. They let them send Hulk away. Korg added, some might help us, some might stand with us. Hulk growled. Hulk not come for help. He leaned forward. Hulk come for them. His fingers tapped the hologram. Iron Man's face, Reed Richards, Doctor Strange, Black Bolt. They sent Hulk away, he growled. They killed Kyera. His voice deepened, vibrating the metal floor beneath him. They killed Hulk's world. The warbound bowed their heads. Not one of them doubted the truth. Not one of them doubted the justice. Not one of them doubted the war to come. The stone ship flew through asteroid fields, shattered comets, dying stars. Hulk spent the journey in silence, staring at Kyera's empty seat, letting his rage grow sharper, colder, more focused than it had ever been. Banner did not appear. Banner was gone. There was no hesitation, no doubt, no guilt left within him. Only vengeance, only purpose, only war. As they approached Earth's solar system, the warbound watched their king rise. Hulk looked out the viewport at the tiny blue world glowing softly against the void. In a rare moment of calm, he whispered, Hulk gave them mercy. Hulk gave them time. Then his eyes hardened. Now Hulk gives them war. The stone ship entered Earth's orbit. Satellites detected it immediately, sending urgent reports across the globe. Incoming extraterrestrial craft. Unknown configuration. Massive energy signatures. The Avengers scrambled. SHIELD mobilized. Reed Richards looked up from his lab in horror as he recognized the silhouette of the craft. Tony Stark's blood ran cold. Doctor Strange felt a disturbance ripple through the magical fabric of reality. Black Bolt sensed a storm approaching that even his voice might not stop. And then, from orbit, Hulk sent a message that played on every communication frequency simultaneously. On screens, radios, holograms, magical projections, even in psychic channels. His face appeared, scarred, furious, illuminated by the red light of raging stars. His voice echoed across Earth. Puny humans, puny heroes. I am the Green Scar. I am the Worldbreaker. And I am coming. He leaned forward. Earth, you've got 1 week. Get ready. We come for vengeance. Every corner of the planet froze. Every hero felt dread coil in their chest. Every villain trembled. Every civilian watched, stunned, as the strongest being in the known universe declared war on their world. The message ended with the stone ship's engines blazing, casting red light across the face of Earth like a rising sun of destruction. On board, the warbound prepared themselves, sharpening weapons, repairing armor, strengthening their resolve. Hulk stood alone at the bow, his eyes locked on Earth, his muscles tense with grief and wrath, his heart beating to the rhythm of war drums no one else could hear. His whisper barely rose above a growl. This time, Hulk will never stop. And as the stone ship descended into Earth's atmosphere, meteors trailing behind it like burning omens, one truth became clear across the universe. World War Hulk had begun. Chapter 8: Hulk versus Black Bolt before the stone. Ship ever cast its shadow over New York City, before the heroes of Earth saw the Green Titan standing above them with their fallen champions at his feet, before the world truly understood what the words World War Hulk meant, the first strike in Hulk's campaign of vengeance took place far from human eyes, on cold gray stone bathed in alien sunlight, in a place that had once been a silent monument to another kind of power, the blue area of the moon, home to the inhuman city of Attilan, and to the man the Illuminati had always considered their final failsafe against the Hulk Blackagar Boltagon, Black Bolt, the silent king whose voice could shatter mountains and whose whisper had once before brought even the Hulk to his knees. It was no accident that Hulk chose him first. Of all the Illuminati, Tony Stark, Reed Richards, Doctor Strange, Charles Xavier, Black Bolt, only Black Bolt had stood toe-to-toe with the Hulk in the past and forced him to yield through sheer raw destructive capacity. Years earlier, when the Hulk had rampaged beyond control, it was Black Bolt the others invoked as the ultimate measure, the one being among them whose very breath could lay waste to armies, whose power was spoken of as a last resort. The message had burned itself into Hulk's memory. We can always call Black Bolt. To the Illuminati, Black Bolt was a safeguard. To Hulk, he had become a symbol of their arrogance, a weapon they believed they could point at him whenever they chose. So when the stone ship dropped out of warp into Earth's orbit, Hulk did not descend directly to the planet that had betrayed him. He turned his gaze first to the moon. On the bridge of the ship, his warbound watched as he adjusted the course. Hiroim understood immediately. Korg let out a low, stone-deep breath. Elo narrowed her eyes. Meek's mandibles clicked with anticipation. "We're not going to Earth first?" Elo asked. Hulk shook his head slowly, eyes burning with cold purpose. "First," he growled, "we make them listen." He pointed toward the moon. "First, we make him scream." The stone ship cut through the void toward the blue area, its engines flaring like the rage in Hulk's chest. The inhuman city of Attilan, built in an atmospheric bubble on the moon's surface, glistened beneath them, crystalline spires, alien architecture, the quiet kingdom of a people born and bred in isolation, ruled by a king who rarely spoke, but whose decisions echoed across worlds. Alarms blared through Attilan as the stone ship approached. Inhuman sensors detected its mass and power. Guards mobilized. Medusa, queen and interpreter to the silent Black Bolt, rushed to his side as the city's protective shield strengthened. Lockjaw, the massive teleporting hound, growled low, sensing danger before he could see it. On the moon's surface, in the blue-tinged daylight, the stone ship opened its massive maw, and from it descended the Hulk. He did not sneak, he did not cloak his approach. He landed on the rocky ground with a force that sent dust clouds spiraling into the lunar sky, sending small tremors through the ancient stone. No helmet, no containment suit, just Hulk, whose lungs now bore the old power's influence, whose body was hardened by Sakaar's unforgiving environment, whose strength had surpassed every limit he had ever known. He walked across the moon's surface toward Attilan's dome, each step radiating intent. Within the city, Black Bolt stood atop a balcony with Medusa beside him. His eyes were calm, the eyes of a man accustomed to carrying unfathomable destructive power. Inside his chest, inside his throat, behind sealed lips. He looked down at the approaching Hulk with the detached focus of a king examining an oncoming storm. Medusa's living hair whipped in agitation, sensing the tension. She spoke for him, as she always did. "You should not have come here, Hulk," she declared, her voice carrying through the calm channels, echoing over the moon's quiet expanse. "Turn back now, or be forced to suffer consequences beyond your imagining." Hulk did not slow, did not stop, did not raise a hand or offer even a gesture of acknowledgement. He simply kept walking until he stood directly beneath the balcony, staring up at the inhuman king through the shimmering barrier of Atalan's atmospheric field. "Last time," Hulk rumbled, voice thrumming through the lunar rock, "they said you were the strongest one there is." He cracked his knuckles slowly. "They said if Hulk got too mad, they'd send you." His lips curled into something that was not quite a smile. Hulk came to see. Medusa's fingers twitched as she fought the urge to retaliate immediately. She knew how dangerous Hulk was. She had seen the aftermath of his battles, but she also knew what Black Bolt's voice could do. In the past, it had leveled mountains, shattered celestial structures, torn ships apart. It had brought the Hulk low with a single word. She did not yet understand that the Hulk who now stood beneath them was not the same creature they had dealt with before. He was stronger, smarter, fueled by loss deeper than any pain he had known, and he had not come to test Black Bolt, he had come to break him. Black Bolt raised one hand, signaling the guards to stand down. This was not a battle for soldiers or armies. This was a confrontation between two forces designed for devastation. He stepped off the balcony and descended, using controlled flight, to land on the moon's surface opposite Hulk. The atmospheric bubble extended around them, creating a breathable environment. They faced one another in the silent alien light of the lunar plane. Two kings, two weapons, two living catastrophes. Hulk's Warbound watched from the stone ship above, silent witnesses to the beginning of Hulk's war. Korg murmured, "That's him. The one they said could stop even the Tha's Hulk." Meek's voice trembled with a twisted reverence. "Maybe we see a king die today." On the ground, Medusa's voice carried faintly from within Atalan. "My love," she said into the calm channel, "you don't have to do this alone." Black Bolt looked back at her, eyes softening for just a heartbeat. Then he shook his head. This was his burden, his responsibility, his choice. He turned back to Hulk. For a moment, the two simply stared at each other. Hulk saw in Black Bolt's gaze the same arrogance he had seen in Tony Stark's calculations, Reed Richards' equations, Stephen Strange's mystical pronouncements. The arrogance of men who believed that power gave them the right to decide the fate of others. Black Bolt saw in Hulk's eyes not the mindless rage he remembered, but something much worse, clarity, a conscious, deliberate hatred, a purpose as sharp as a blade. Hulk raised his voice. "You sent Hulk away." His words were low, but they carried the weight of a world's death. "You sent Hulk to space. Hulk found a world. Hulk found a queen. Hulk found peace." His fists tightened. The stone beneath his feet cracked. "Then your bomb killed her, killed Hulk's people, killed Hulk's world." He stepped forward. "Now, Hulk is here, to kill yours." Black Bolt's jaw tightened slightly. He did not speak, but his hands flexed, and the atmosphere around him vibrated as he prepared to unleash his most devastating power. Many beings in the universe underestimated him because he did not speak. They assumed silence meant restraint alone. They did not understand that silence was mercy. Hulk understood, and he was done being shown mercy. Black Bolt took a breath. The air around his throat shimmered as quasi-sonic energy gathered, compressing into a destructive potential capable of vaporizing entire armies. He parted his lips just enough to let a single word escape. Enough. The sound was barely a whisper, but it hit the Hulk like a meteor. The ground beneath him shattered, hurling dust and rock outward in a circular shockwave. The force slammed into Hulk's body, compressing his muscles, driving him to one knee, hurling him backward into the lunar rock. Cracks spidered through the stone for miles. Atalin trembled. The warbound braced themselves on the ship as the shockwave reached into the thin air. Meek whooped in panicked awe. He knocked him down. He knocked the Hulk down. But Korg watched more closely. Not for long, he murmured. Hulk staggered back to his feet almost immediately. His ears rang. His chest burned. But he stood. His eyes burned brighter than before. Black Bolt stared, surprised despite himself. Very few beings had ever stood after hearing even a whisper of his voice at full focus. Hulk wiped a smear of green blood from his lip, glanced at it, and then looked back at Black Bolt. "You said one word," he growled. He took a step forward. Last time, that was enough. Another. Step. The lunar rock splintered under his feet. This time, his jaw clenched, muscles bulged, veins throbbing like coiled cables. Anger burned hotter, feeding strength, feeding resilience. Hulk's power rose with his rage, the old power humming faintly around him, responding to his fury. Hulk didn't come for a whisper. He launched himself at Black Bolt with a speed that defied his size. The Inhuman King reacted instantly, leaping upward, releasing another blast of his voice mid-flight. "Stop!" The shockwave slammed into Hulk again, tearing the dust from the ground, sending jagged rock shards flying outward like shrapnel. Hulk's body buckled, but he kept moving through the sonic onslaught, each step tearing his skin yet healing as fast as it ripped. His anger grew, his strength grew, his determination solidified into something unbreakable. He roared back, not with sonic energy, but with raw physical might, leaping forward and slamming his fist into Black Bolt's chest with a force that would have crushed a mountain. The king flew backward, slamming into a jagged rock formation with a violent crunch. Atalin's crystal tower shook in the distance. Medusa gasped, reaching out toward the battlefield as if she could pull him back by will alone. Black Bolt coughed, forcing himself upright, blood at the corner of his mouth. He inhaled again. This time he did not whisper. He unleashed something closer to a true exhalation of his power. The sky itself trembled. A beam of destructive sonic force burst from his mouth, slamming into Hulk full on. The blast carved a trench into the moon's surface, vaporizing rock, sending chunks of debris drifting upward into the low gravity. Hulk disappeared in the blinding roaring column of power. For a moment, it seemed as though nothing in existence could withstand such an attack. Medusa watched in horror and awe. The warbound watched in strained silence. And then, slowly, impossibly, Hulk walked out of the beam. His skin was torn, his muscles were shredded, his bones cracked, but every injury closed as quickly as it opened. His body refused to fall, his strength surged with each step. His eyes glowed with primal, unyielding fury. Through the fading sonic barrage, Hulk's voice rose like something dragged up from the core of a dying star. "You wanted Hulk gone." Another step. "You wanted Hulk exiled." Another. "You wanted Hulk controlled." He lunged. "Now Hulk controls you." He reached Black Bolt in a single bound and grabbed him by the throat before the king could unleash another sound. With one hand clamped around Black Bolt's neck, Hulk slammed him into the ground. The moon shook with the impact. He punched him once, twice, 3 times, each blow cratering the rock beneath them. Black Bolt tried to open his mouth, to whisper, to unleash even a fragment of his power, but Hulk tightened his grip, forcing his jaw shut. "No more," Hulk snarled. "You had your turn." Atalan's royal guard raced toward the battle, but Medusa raised a hand to stop them. She knew that if they intervened, Hulk might tear the entire city apart. And somewhere beneath her queenly composure, a part of her understood. This was not a random attack. This was judgment. Hulk pummeled Black Bolt again and again, each punch fueled by memories of Kyra's smile, of their unborn child, of Sakaar's burning horizon. This is for my queen, he growled between blows. This is for my people. This is for my world. He lifted Black Bolt by the throat and held him close, staring into his battered face. They said you were the strongest one there is. He slammed him into a boulder, cracking it in two. Now, Hulk is. The specifics of the final moments of that fight would later be debated by those who tried to piece together the story. Some claimed Black Bolt managed one last scream, blowing apart a chunk of the moon's surface. Others insisted Hulk silenced him completely. What mattered was the outcome. The inhuman king, the living weapon of the Illuminati, lay broken at Hulk's feet. When the dust settled, the warbound descended. They found Hulk standing over Black Bolt's unconscious body, breathing heavily, knuckles bloodied, but already healing. Korg spoke first, his voice reverent and shaken. You beat him. Heroine bowed his head. They said his voice could tear worlds apart. Hulk glared down at Black Bolt. So can Hulk. Meek scuttled closer, eyes gleaming. What now, Hulk? Do we kill him? Tear his city down? Hulk stared at Black Bolt a moment longer. Then he knelt, grabbed the king by the arm and hoisted him up like a broken trophy. No, he growled. He comes with Hulk. Korg frowned. As a prisoner? Hulk nodded. As a message. They returned to the stone ship with Black Bolt's limp form in tow. From Atalan, Medusa watched in grief and fury as her king was taken. She vowed that no matter how this war ended, the memory of this day would never be forgotten among her people. On the bridge of the stone ship, Hulk chained Black Bolt in a containment pod, leaving him alive, conscious enough to understand what would come next. You were first, Hulk said quietly. Next is Stark, then Richards, then Strange. He lifted his gaze toward Earth, now swelling in the viewport like a ripe fruit ready to burst. Hulk will show them all. The ship descended toward the planet, its engines igniting the sky. And when Hulk finally appeared above New York City, when he broadcast his image to every screen, every tower, every phone, he did not come alone. Behind him, beaten and bound, stood the man the heroes of Earth had once called upon to stop the Hulk. Black Bolt, broken and silent. Hulk pointed at the camera, at the world, at the heroes who had betrayed him. You see this man, he roared. You called him your last resort. You said he was the only one who could stop. Hulk. Hulk went to the moon. Hulk heard him whisper. Hulk heard him scream. His grip tightened on Black Bolt's restraints as he dragged him into full view. Now Hulk is here, he growled. And if you don't get off this planet in 24 hours... His eyes flared, his voice dropped into a deadly rumble. Hulk will do this to all of you. The feet cut. Across Earth, fear spread like wildfire. On the moon, Atalan mourned and prepared. And in the stone ship, Hulk stood over his first fallen enemy, ready to bring war to everyone who had ever believed they could decide his fate. Black Bolt's defeat was not simply a battle won. It was the opening note of a symphony of destruction, a warning, a declaration, the first proof that this time nothing, not kings, not geniuses, not sorcerers, would be enough to stop the Worldbreaker. Chapter 9: Hulk vs. Iron Man and the Avengers. When the stone ship finally descended from the clouds and hovered above Manhattan like an omen carved from alien metal, the heroes of Earth realized too late that this war had never been designed to begin with negotiations, diplomacy, or hesitation. It was engineered by grief, sharpened into vengeance, and the Hulk who stepped out onto the hovering platform above Madison Square Garden was not the Avenger they once knew, nor the wandering monster they once feared, but a king whose world had been burned from beneath his feet. The sight of him alone, larger, heavier, eyes burning with green fire, was enough to freeze even the boldest hero for a heartbeat. And behind him, chained and broken, the body of Black Bolt dangled like a banner of what Hulk had already accomplished before even touching Earth's soil. The message was clear. If this is what happened to the man you once called your last resort, imagine what comes next. The first to respond was Tony Stark. Iron Man streaked across the sky, repulsors blazing, broadcasting warnings to evacuate the area. Inside his armor, Tony's heart hammered. He had prepared for this moment since the day they exiled Hulk. He had built new satellites, armor upgrades, contingency drones, non-lethal countermeasures. But deep down, he knew the truth. There was no non-lethal anything that could stop a creature who had survived the destruction of a planet. As Iron Man approached, Hulk simply looked up at him with an expression that was almost bored. "Stark," he growled. Tony opened his faceplate, meeting Hulk's gaze. "Bruce, listen, we can fix this. Whatever you think we did." Hulk cut him off with a low, rumbling voice that shook the stone ship beneath them. "You know what you did?" Tony swallowed. He knew. They all knew. He had replayed the moment 1,000 times, the meeting of the Illuminati, the vote to exile Hulk, the belief that sending him away was mercy. And now, looking at the rage inside Hulk's eyes, Tony understood that mercy had turned into genocide. "I'm sorry," Tony said quietly, and for the first time in years, he meant it. Hulk stared at him for a second too long. Then he moved. The punch that followed shook New York like an earthquake. Iron Man's armor was built from bleeding-edge Stark tech, reinforced specifically to withstand Hulk-level impacts, but when Hulk's fist connected with Tony's chest, the repulsor core cracked on impact. Tony flew backward through the air like a meteor, crashing through the facade of a skyscraper in an explosion of shattered glass and buckling steel. Pedestrians screamed as debris rained toward the streets, but the war-bound were already on the ground, intercepting falling beams, redirecting broken stone, protecting civilians, a cruel reminder that Hulk was not here to kill innocents. He was here to punish heroes. Iron Man's systems struggled to reboot. Damage reports flooded his HUD. Hulk was already leaping after him. The next blow smashed Tony deeper into the building's skeleton, bending the support beams around him like soft clay. Tony activated a sonic pulse, sending a shockwave through Hulk's ears, but Hulk barely flinched. The old power dampened the effect, and anger fueled him past the pain. He grabbed Iron Man by the leg, swung him like a wrecking ball, and hurled him through 3 more floors. By now, the Avengers had arrived, Spider-Man swinging between collapsing girders, Luke Cage shouting for civilians to run, She-Hulk staring at her cousin with a mixture of horror and heartbreak. But before they could engage, the stone ship opened again, and the war-bound leapt to the ground, Korg's massive stone frame crashing into the street like a meteor. Elo landing with her Sakaarian blade drawn, Heroim channeling old power resonances, Miek skittering forward with deadly precision. The Avengers realized instantly that this was not just Hulk's war. It was a coordinated assault by warriors forged in a world far harsher than Earth. While the war-bound met the Avengers in brutal clashes across the street, Korg knocking Luke Cage backward through an entire bus, Heroim parrying She-Hulk blow for blow, Hulk focused solely on Iron Man. Tony regained enough altitude to fire a barrage of high-density repulsor beams, but Hulk jumped onto him mid-flight, smashing the armor's helmet with both fists. "You threw Hulk away," he roared, each punch cracking the nanoframe. "You said Hulk too dangerous." Another blow. "So you killed Hulk's world." Tony's suit overloaded, alarms blaring, the energy core preparing to shut down. Desperate, Tony triggered the Gamma Protocol, a satellite-powered beam designed specifically to counteract Hulk's cells, something he had sworn never to use except in the gravest emergency. The sky split with light. A massive blast struck Hulk from above, enveloping him in a column of gamma-inhibiting energy strong enough to cripple a lesser being. Buildings trembled. The shock wave sent cars skidding across the pavement. For a moment, Tony dared to hope that it might work. Then Hulk stepped out of the beam, stronger, angrier, eyes burning with a fury that matched the core of a star. "You don't learn," Hulk growled. He seized Iron Man by the chest and slammed him into the ground so hard that the concrete cratered for 30 meters in every direction. The armor sparked violently. Tony coughed blood inside his helmet. Hulk knelt beside him, and Tony saw in his eyes not madness but cold clarity, the clarity of a judge delivering a sentence. "We're not done," Hulk whispered. "Not yet." He stood and turned away. Iron Man lay broken, armor failing, systems dark. But Hulk hadn't come to kill him, not yet. Not until he had made him understand what true suffering felt like. Not until all the Illuminati were at Hulk's mercy. As Hulk walked back to the stone ship, the Avengers regrouped. "Captain," America arrived on the scene, breath heavy, shield raised. He looked at Hulk, the monster he had fought beside in 100 battles, and felt a chill run down his spine. Spider-Man, bruised and panting, whispered, "Cap, what do we do?" Captain America watched Hulk lift Black Bolt's limp body for the world to see. Watch the war-bound push back Earth's defenders with ease. Watch the strongest being on the planet declare war not in blind fury, but in deliberate judgment. He lowered his shield slightly. "We survive," he said quietly. "And we pray." Hulk stood atop the stone ship as it rose above New York. Iron Man defeated, the Avengers scattered, Black Bolt displayed like a fallen warning. He broadcast his message across the globe once again. "Stark is beaten. Richards is next. Strange after him. Then everyone who stands with them." The world watched as Hulk's eyes narrowed with a promise carved from loss. "You started this," he growled. "Hulk will finish it." And with that, the stone ship turned toward the Baxter Building. The war was far from over. It had only just begun. Chapter 10. The Arena in New York. New York had seen gods descend from the heavens, aliens spill from portals, sorcerers twist reality around them, and armies clash on its streets, but nothing in its long history of chaos compared to the moment Hulk transformed the heart of Manhattan into a gladiator arena, an act not of madness but of deliberate judgment, designed to mirror the horrors he had endured on Sakaar, and to force Earth's mightiest heroes to confront the consequences of their choices. It began with the arrival of the stone ship above Madison Square Garden, its shadow swallowing entire blocks, its engines vibrating the city like a heartbeat of war. Debris still smoldered from Hulk's battle with Iron Man as the warbound descended, Korg smashing craters into the pavement with each step, Hero directing old power currents into stabilizing broken structures so civilians could flee, Meek darting between abandoned cars, Elo cutting down drones sent by SHIE Elid to contain the invasion. Hulk strode behind them, dragging the unconscious Black Bolt by chains forged from alien alloys, his face a silent warning of what Earth had already failed to stop. Then Hulk raised one fist, the warbound stopped. The city held its breath. Hulk slammed his fist into the ground. The impact cracked the street from one avenue to the next, sending a shockwave that rippled through asphalt and concrete. splitting open the very foundations of Madison Square Garden. Heroim used the old power to reinforce the collapsing metal as Hulk bent girders, tore beams apart, and reshaped the structure into something both terrifying and awe-inspiring. A circular arena, enclosed by twisted steel and alien plating taken from the stone ship, rising like the skeleton of a fallen beast. In minutes, something no army, no construction crew, no human institution could ever replicate, Hulk forged the garden into a gladiatorial coliseum, the arena, the site where he would judge Earth's heroes as he had once been judged by the Red King. Civilians who had not evacuated stood frozen, unsure whether to scream or stare in horrified silence as Hulk mounted the central platform, gripping a shattered chunk of Iron Man's armor in one hand, Black Bolt's chains in the other. He cast Iron Man's remains to the side like scrap. Then he lifted Black Bolt for the world to see. "This man," Hulk roared, "was your last resort. You said he could stop Hulk." He tossed Black Bolt to the ground like a discarded weapon. He could not. Cameras across the city streamed every second. News helicopters hovered as close as they dared. Every screen in Times Square flickered with Hulk's image. The message was not just for heroes, it was for the entire world. "Tony Stark is beaten," Hulk declared. "Black Bolt is beaten." His voice deepened into a low growl that vibrated every window in the arena. "And now, Hulk calls the rest." He slammed his fist into the ground. "Avengers, Fantastic Four, X-Men, SHIELD." The ground trembled. "Come out!" The warbound roared in unison, their voices echoing like thunder. On the outskirts of the arena, Earth's heroes gathered, Captain America leading a strike team, Spider-Man perched on a ruined lamppost, Luke Cage ready for close combat, Ms. Marvel hovering above the crowd, her eyes glowing with energy. The Fantastic Four arrived soon after. Reed Richards stood with his jaw clenched, Sue shielding nearby civilians with invisible barriers, Johnny blazing with controlled fire, Ben Grimm cracking his knuckles. Strange's astral form hovered at the edge of the battlefield, not intervening yet, but watching with grim calculation. They were Earth's greatest defenders. But Hulk did not look afraid. He looked disappointed. "You lied to Hulk," he said quietly, the arena amplifying his every word. "You said Hulk was too dangerous. You said Hulk would break your world." His fists clenched. "But you broke Hulk's world first." With a gesture, Hulk commanded Heroim to activate the control nodes embedded into the arena walls, nodes built with obedience disc technology, modified to respond to Hulk's voice and old power resonance. Projectors lit up around the Colosseum, displaying images Hulk had stored during his journey. Sakaar's villages burning after the explosion, the crater where the palace had stood, the ashes that had once been Kyera. Gasps spread through the crowd. Sue Richards covered her mouth. Spider-Man whispered, "Oh God, look what happened to them." Hulk saw their horror. It did not move him. "This is what your leaders did," he said. "Your heroes, your geniuses. They sent Hulk away. They said it was mercy." His voice broke into something deeper, heavier. "This is their mercy." Reed Richards stepped forward, raising both hands. "Hulk, please let us explain what really happened. The explosion." Hulk cut him off with a roar that shook dust from the arena walls. Hulk saw it happen. He stepped closer, eyes burning with memory. Hulk held her. Hulk heard her scream. Hulk felt her die. Reed froze. Words failed him. Tony Stark, battered and carried in by Luke Cage, lowered his eyes. He already knew what Hulk would say next. "And now," Hulk growled, "you will fight for your lives." Gasps erupted. Captain America stepped forward, gripping his shield. "Bruce, don't do this." Hulk turned his gaze towards him. For a moment, sadness flickered in his expression. Cap was not part of the Illuminati. He had opposed their decision. Hulk knew that, but grief does not care for footnotes. You stand with them, Hulk said quietly. So you stand against Hulk. The arena walls shifted, locking into place. Barriers rose around the heroes. Hulk lifted his voice. Today you fight like Hulk fought. Today you learn what Hulk learned. He gestured to the ring. If you win, if you survive, Hulk lets you live. He cracked his knuckles. If you lose, you fall. Then he pointed at one man, Reed Richards. You! The air around the arena thinned. Reed stepped into the ring. Sue shouted for him to stop, but he shook his head. He knew Hulk would not be denied. He looked at his old friend, who was no longer a friend at all, and whispered, I'm sorry. Hulk didn't blink. Prove it. Reed shifted his body into an armored coil, preparing for a fight that would define the fate of every hero on Earth. Hulk's eyes narrowed. Round one. And with that, the arena, New York's twisted coliseum, erupted into war as the Hulk forced Earth's champions to face him, not as a monster, not as an avenger, but as the gladiator king forged in the fires of a world they had destroyed. Chapter 11. Worldbreaker. There is a moment in every war when the violence stops being a clash of armies and becomes something else entirely, something mythic, something terrifying, something closer to the shifting of tectonic plates than the will of men. And on that day in New York, after the battles in the streets, after the arena trials, after Reed Richards fell and Susan Storm screamed and Doctor Strange shattered his hands, summoning a demon he barely controlled, the transformation finally occurred. Hulk ceased to be merely angry, ceased to be the Green Scar, ceased to be the king of a fallen world, or the avenger of his people's deaths, and crossed the invisible threshold into the form whispered in Sakaarian prophecy and feared even by gods, the Worldbreaker, a being whose mere footsteps could split continents and whose heartbeat could destabilize the atmosphere. It began slowly, almost imperceptibly, with the warbound gathering around Hulk in the ruins of Madison Square Garden as the Avengers lay broken across the crushed streets, Iron Man's armor sparking, Spider-Man bleeding through his mask, Doctor Strange unconscious with the demon Zom receding from his ruined hands, and even the Thing, who had once claimed to go punch for punch with Hulk, curled on his side from a single strike. Hulk stood at the center of them all, breathing heavy but not from exhaustion, from the emotional weight of his own restraint. He had not killed any of them, not yet. For all his fury, Hulk was still holding back. He had refused to become the monster the Illuminati had imagined. But as the dust settled and the world watched in paralyzed fascination, Meeks scuttled forward and whispered the words that would finally unchain the last limits of Hulk's self-control. They never meant you to come home, Hulk, he hissed. They always feared you, and now you see what must be done. End them, end their world. Hiroim sensed the danger immediately and turned sharply toward Meek. Stop, he warned. Do not push him further. But Meek continued, mandibles twitching. Why show mercy to those who gave none? Why stop now? Smash them, Hulk. Smash everything. Let their world die like ours did. Hulk turned slowly toward his warbound. His eyes were shadows of grief, lit by the fire of a dying star. Meek, he growled, stop talking. But the seed had already been planted. As Hulk looked around at the fallen heroes, men and women he had fought beside, saved, trusted, he realized there would be no peace. Not here, not ever. The world would never stop seeing him as a threat. And deep inside, something old, something born from Sakaar's molten rivers and the old power Kayera had carried in her veins, began to stir. Hiroim felt the ground trembling. Korg placed a cautious hand against the cracked asphalt. Hulk, Something's happening to the earth, he said softly. Hulk's breathing deepened. With every inhalation, the air around him shimmered. With every heartbeat, the ground vibrated. With every pulse of his grief, the tectonic plates groaned. His skin glowed faintly, veins lit with green radiance like molten emerald lava. He clenched his fists. The shockwave knocked over cars. "Stop!" Ben Grimm shouted, forcing himself upright. "Big guy, listen to me, you're about to—" But it was too late. Hulk took one step, just one. The shockwave shattered every window for 50 city blocks. Another step, and the ground cratered beneath him as though the earth itself were trying to escape. Somewhere underground, a water main burst from the pressure. Transformers detonated. The Hudson River rippled violently, as if a giant invisible hand had slapped its surface. Tony Stark, still barely conscious, forced his damaged HUD to scan the gamma output. Numbers climbed past every known scale, then broke it. "God, help us," he whispered. "He really is the Worldbreaker." Hulk raised his head toward the sky, remembering Kyera. Her smile, her voice, her final touch before the explosion consumed her. Something inside him snapped. Not in rage. Hulk had known rage his entire life, but in despair, he whispered her name once. "Kyera!" The ground split beneath him in a concentric fissure that radiated outward like the petals of a blooming flower. Only this flower was made of destruction. High-rise buildings shook, swayed, threatened to collapse. Even the stone ship trembled in the air. Hiroim, sensing the old power pouring out of Hulk uncontrollably, stepped toward him. "My king," he said gently, "you must stop. If you take one more step, you will break the planet." Hulk stared at him, eyes filled with agony. "Hulk doesn't care anymore." The sentence felt heavier than any punch. The warbound fell silent. Then, slowly, Hulk raised his foot. The earth shuddered. The air grew still. Even the heroes, beaten, bruised, barely conscious, looked up in terror. Captain America whispered, "Oh my God, he's going to do it." And then the unthinkable happened. The truth came out. Meek, in a moment of twisted pride or madness, finally told Hulk what truly happened to Sakaar. The warp core had not malfunctioned on its own. The explosion had been triggered by a group of Red King loyalists trying to assassinate Hulk's supporters. Hulk froze. "You're lying." Meek shook his head. "Hulk wanted to smash. I wanted to see the fire, so I did nothing. I watched them light the fuse." Silence fell over the arena. The warbound recoiled in horror. Korg whispered, "Meek, what have you done?" Hiroim dropped to one knee as old grief washed over him. Reed Richards, battered and barely conscious, lifted his head as the truth finally broke into the open, and Hulk's world, already shattered once, shattered again. His knees buckled. His heart felt like it had been punched through his chest. His rage inverted into anguish so volatile it could have cracked the moon. "You," Hulk said, voice trembling, "you let her die?" Meek nodded. "For war. For glory. For you." The scream Hulk let out was not human, not alien, not anything born of life. It was a sound that shook the sky itself. The ground splintered violently, the wind reversed direction, the earth groaned in its prison of tectonic stress. Then Hulk stopped, completely. He stood trembling, broken, staring at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. "Hulk almost killed everyone," he whispered. His voice cracked. His hands shook uncontrollably. For the first time since Sakaar's death, Banner surfaced, weak, grieving, horrified by how close they had come to ending the world. With a roar that was half fury and half heartbreak, Hulk turned on Miek, striking him with enough force to send the insectoid warriors skidding across the shattered arena floor. "Miek killed Kyera," Hulk said, voice raw. "Not them." The prophecy ended there. not in the destruction of Earth, not in the fall of the heroes, but in the realization that Hulk had nearly become the thing he hated most, someone who let innocence die. His knees struck the ground, the Worldbreaker flickered and dimmed, and the city, which had been seconds from annihilation, breathed again. When the dust settled, Hulk lowered his head, tears mixing with blood and dirt. "I'm done," he whispered. "You want Hulk? Take him." SHIELD forces approached carefully. The heroes watched in stunned silence, and as Banner finally resurfaced, exhausted and broken, they placed the inhibitor collar around his neck. Hulk did not resist. The war was over, not because he was beaten, but because he could not bear the weight of his own strength anymore. And thus ended the brief, terrible reign of the Worldbreaker, not with destruction, but with truth. Chapter 12: The Truth and the End of the War. When the dust settled over New York, when the screams had quieted, when the fires smoldered into fading embers, when the heroes of Earth lay beaten but alive in the wreckage of a city that had nearly been torn apart by the wrath of a single man, the truth finally stood naked in the center of the arena Hulk had forged from broken steel and shattered trust. The truth, spoken by Meek in a moment of warped pride, had ripped through the air with more force than any blow Hulk had delivered. The Illuminati's bomb had indeed detonated, but it had not malfunctioned by accident, not triggered by Tony's engineering or Reed's calculations or the cosmic strain of Sakaar. It had been deliberately set off by Red King loyalists, and Miek had watched it happen without warning Hulk, without stopping it, because deep down he wanted Sakaar to burn, wanted the chaos, wanted Hulk to rise not as the Sakaarson but as the Worldbreaker, a weapon fueled by grief and rage. That truth hit Hulk harder than Black Bolt's scream, harder than Iron Man's Gamma Blast, harder than Strange's demonic sorcery. It was a truth strong enough to break him, not his body but his heart. As the noise of battle faded, Hulk stared at Meek with a look so hollow, so devastated, that even the Warbound stepped back. "You let her die," Hulk said, his voice low and trembling like the crack of ice on a frozen lake. "You let them kill Kayera." Meek stood proudly, as if expecting praise. "It made you strong," he hissed. "It made you the king the war needed." Heroine, horrified, whispered, "You fool! Kayera was our queen." Korg lowered his massive stone head. "You robbed us all." But Meek only clicked his mandibles, defiant. "I followed the true path. I followed the fire." Hulk felt something tear inside him, something he could not punch, could not smash, could not silence. The world around him blurred into a haze of grief and betrayal as he realized he had waged war on Earth, had beaten men he once called brothers, had nearly crushed the planet beneath his feet, all because he believed they had murdered his queen and unborn child, all because he trusted Miek. His scream echoed through the ruins of the arena, ringing with a pain far deeper than rage. And then, with a single monstrous blow, Hulk struck Meek, sending him skidding across the shattered ground, his exoskeleton cracking under the force. "You killed her," Hulk said, voice shaking. "Not them." The Warbound watched as their king collapsed to his knees, his hands trembling. The glow of the old power faded from his veins. His muscles shrank back from the edge of world-ending potential. He lowered his head and whispered, "Hulk almost killed everyone, because of a lie." The heroes of Earth, barely standing, watched as Hulk, who had just nearly broken the planet in half, now hugged himself like a child lost in the dark. Reed Richards, bruised and battered, stepped forward. He had no strength left for arrogance, no breath left for justification. "Bruce," he said quietly, we truly believed we were saving lives when we sent you away, but we never meant for any of this." Tony Stark limped forward beside him, armor sparking. "We were wrong," Tony admitted. "All of us. and we will live with that. Strange. Hands burned from demonic possession nodded. There is no spell to fix this, he murmured. No magic that can undo your pain. Hulk did not look up. His enormous frame shook with silent agony. For the first time in years, Banner rose to the surface, not in control, but standing next to Hulk in their shared mind, as broken as he was. Banner whispered to him, "We're done. We can't keep fighting." And Hulk listened. When SHIELD agents finally approached, inhibitor collar in hand, Hulk did not resist. He did not roar. He did not fight. He simply lowered his head and allowed them to place the device around his neck. He let his power drain, let the fire inside him dim to embers. The warbound watched, torn between loyalty and heartbreak. Hiroim bowed his head. "My king," he whispered, "forgive us." Hulk looked at him, at all of them, with a sadness deeper than space. "No king," he said softly, "not anymore." As the collar locked, the gamma energy around him flickered and subsided. His body shrank, skin paling, muscles contracting until Bruce Banner stood in Hulk's place, weak, exhausted, barely able to stand. Reed caught him before he fell. "Bruce," he murmured, "we'll get you help." Banner shook his head weakly. "Don't help me," he whispered. "Just never do this to anyone again." Around them, the city lay in ruins, but the world still stood. Hulk had stopped himself, not because anyone defeated him, but because the truth had forced him to confront what he was becoming. As SHIELD airships descended and the Avengers regrouped, something unexpected happened. The people of New York, who had been terrified moments earlier, began to realize that Hulk had spared them. Even at his worst, he had not killed civilians. Even when he could have crushed the planet, he stopped. Captain America stepped forward, wincing from his injuries. He placed a hand on Bruce's shoulder. "You're not a monster," he said softly. "You never were." Bruce, tears streaming down his face, whispered back, "Tell that to the dead." Gaera's face flashed in his mind. Sakaar burning, his unborn child gone. He bit back another sob. The warbound surrounded him. They placed their hands over their hearts in the ancient Sakaarian gesture of loyalty. "Where you go, we go," Korg said. Banner looked at them. "No," he whispered. "This is where we stop." Hiroim stepped closer. "We are warbound," he insisted. "Our oaths don't break." Banner shook his head. "Warbound follow a king, and the king is gone." Their silence said what words could not. Slowly, respectfully, they stepped back. As Banner was carried to the transport craft, still weak but alive, Reed Richards looked out at the destroyed arena and whispered to Tony, "We created this." Tony swallowed, "and we'll spend the rest of our lives making sure it never happens again." In the days that followed, the world debated Hulk's fate endlessly, monster, hero, king, weapon. But those who were there knew the truth. Hulk had nearly ended the world, but in the end, only he could stop himself. Only he chose mercy. And perhaps that was why the story did not end in fire, but in sorrow. Because Hulk did not lose the war. He ended it. Not with a fist, but with the truth. And as Bruce Banner disappeared into SHIELD custody, the world breathed again, aware that somewhere inside him, buried beneath grief and ashes, the Worldbreaker still waited,